Good evening, good Thursday, everyone. It is me, Eddie Phillips. This is the interactive Black History and Knowledge session for the Erudition Network. We are on here every Thursday to cover Black history and general knowledge. Having some weather issues here today, so I wanted to get on as quickly as I possibly could in case we run into some problems later on as the broadcast goes forward. It's been a interesting week. I haven't really felt good all this week, so I have. I'm going to take this session as more of a question and answer session, and kind of go from there. As I said, we've been having some weather issues, so if the program drops a little bit, please let me know. Maybe it's a browser issue or something that we could look at to try to rectify how it streams. I don't like it when it's breaking up and falling apart while we're doing this. So we're gonna bear it and go through it as much as we possibly can. And it said it's a hailstorm a moment ago. Yeah, it's been pretty messed up. Hey Eric, good to see you. Good to see you. Glad you're here. But as I said, I haven't been feeling well this week, so I didn't get a chance to really go. We're still on the uneducables, and we're going to get back into that next week. But I really wanted to make this session more of a question and answer session as we go through it, because it's easier on me. It's easier on me to do it and answer your questions as we go through this than me going over some randomized topic. To fill the time. I will say that there are a lot of things that are currently in the media and the news right now. One is the submarine situation. Found out about the immigrant ship that capsized in the Med, and so there is a lot that is going on throughout the world that is of interest. So I'm sure there are many out there, people who are out there who probably do have something to share, something to talk about, and I encourage you to do so as we do go through this broadcast. I will say I didn't know about the Bosnian migrant boat disaster. I did not know until I think it was Pastor Razor comments and said something on Facebook, and then I looked. As I haven't been feeling well for the last couple of days, so I have missed certain things, but it's not surprising. It's discouraging that people from Syria, Pakistan, Afghanis, and Palestinians, and even some Egyptians could be missing, and some dead, and very few people in the Western world particularly talk about it. It's unfortunate, but it's not surprising. If you look at the history of what has gone on and if you look at the Mediterranean, if you look at the Red Sea, if you look at the the Horn of Africa, if you look at the Arabian Sea, if you look at the Indian Ocean, you will be surprised at how many ships capsize, how many people die yearly, and no one over here gives it a second thought. But when some ships, cargo ships, were being attacked, not always taken over, but being attacked by Somali pirates, it was all over the news. It was everywhere, because the desire to talk about that, to I guess to show that other parts of the world are destabilized, is huge, and it's big business over in the West. Hello, good to see you. Thank you for joining us. And it's sad because hundreds of people could die, 5 or 6 people could die on a self-chartered expedition full of hubris that could lead to death, and people who are trying to survive out there on dhows and migrant ships are dying at huge numbers, and we're still not talking about it. So it is something that is of concern, and something that we should look at as we look at this as our cultures, not just the society, but the culture as a whole. And here in America, in Britain, and parts of Europe, and how we do things. It's sad. It is extremely sad. One of the things, I guess, if you guys don't have any questions, nobody's popping anything in here. One of the things I guess that we can talk about tonight is this idea of how do I term this? Privilege is the best way to term it, but it's a little bit more than that, right? We're talking about people who are paying to do things that a lot of things are detrimental, not only to them, but could harm others. We see this whole flurry of privatized space flight, right? Where everybody wants, billionaires are inviting folks to fly into the lower atmosphere just before space, because they're not actually penetrating free space, and travel, right? And then the idea of luxury travel, going to the moon and eventually doing luxury travel. I saw a picture the other day of lights on the moon when they said they wanted to commercialize or to summarize the moon, and eventually put hotels and escapist places to go on the moon. And no one thinks about the dangers of this, not only to the people who make the trip, but also to the people who are here. Because once you start down that avenue, once you start going and trying to commercialize parts of space, you not only endanger yourself, but you endanger those folks who are down here. No major science is being done to study a lot of this. We don't have any reference. There's no aliens that we meet that tell us, hey, that's not a good idea to do this. What would happen if we got into a conflict on the moon and destroyed half the moon? How does that work for having a satellite that orbits the planet, that participates in the tides? What does that do to our planet? None of that is being considered, because the idea of how much money can we make doing this? How much money can we make doing this? Unfortunately, the men that went to go look at the Titanic, they weren't the first to go. They also weren't the first ones who had been briefed on the dangers of it. But the desire to do it was still strong. The desire to do it was still there. And that hubris, that's the term I've been using for ever since I heard about it. It's hubris, right? This excessive vanity, pride, confidence, conceitedness, this supercilious idea that you are amazing or above things because you have wealth and privilege. That doesn't save you. That doesn't save you. Julius Caesar was Caesar of Rome. That didn't save him. And this idea that because of my position is as old as time immemorial. We constantly see this. This is not a new story. In fact, they were going to look at a site of great hubris. People who took a voyage on a ship that the creator said that not even God could sink. And we are constantly being reminded of the hubris that it takes to do what we're doing. But we continue down this path. And so I guess we can talk about where we are in a world where we have people who feel this way, who live this way. And though it is unfortunate that folks die, there is a lesson to be learned from it. And there's something from us to take from it. And that is, right, that it doesn't matter what you have, how little, how much you have. We could all easily leave here at any moment and any time. And that's the lesson, I guess. I would ask you tonight, as we're taking a little bit more slower tonight. Hey, have someone share the program, share the program. Get someone to watch it who you have not shared it with. Encourage them to follow the Erudition Network and to join us every part of the week's Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday when we're on, so that you can also participate in all of the different programs that we have and help to grow the network. Questions. I put out earlier, I want this to be interactive. I need it to be interactive today. If you got any questions, please ask questions tonight. Whatever is on your concern, historically or otherwise, please ask questions tonight. And I will do my best to answer it and also give you some factual place where you may be able to further your knowledge or understanding on it. But I encourage you to ask questions tonight, whatever those may be, on any part of whatever topic or subject. Come on, it's 4 of you all in here. I'm sure somebody has something. Or maybe not. You sent me something on a Black Little Mermaid that you never answered. I'm pretty sure I didn't answer that, but you can ask it again. Turn it back. Thank you. Ask your question again, Eric, wherever that may be. Elliot, oh, you say you just joined. Okay. Any question? Y'all kind of slow here tonight. I mean, I could bloviate and talk about just anything, but I'm giving you guys some room here. A moment here. All right, here we are. What are your thoughts on Disney remaking movies to include the LGBTQ community or the Black community? Disney has the right to make whatever movie that they want to make. And they can have their characters be whoever they desire it to be. I think inclusion is important, but I also think that it should feel natural. I think historically, we have run into a problem where we overcompensate, and what that really comes down to is that screenwriters. I've said this before. Screenwriters, filmmakers, they are influenced by those who come before. So even screenwriters and filmmakers who are of color fall in line with what they see the practice of 90 to 100 years of film has done. And so they use tropes and stereotypes and other things too. And unfortunately, what winds up happening with that is that we continually produce films that I don't think really show truth, right? Even in a fictional environment. Like, I think you can overdo it with putting characters. I'll give you an example. If you go and make, like they're talking about right now, making a Black Superman. Why? Why does that have to be a Black Superman? Why can't it just be, why can't you create a Black superhero with similar powers if need? Because there's many characters in comics and things that have flight and all these other things. But you want to usurp the original idea by adding something that does not fit the dramatic narrative. And that is the and then they use this thing where we say, well, it's a multiverse. That's the whole thing of the multiverse is a catch-all, right? We can do whatever we want to do because it's the multiverse. But what that's really saying is that this is not the real universe. This is just some part of it, and we're looking at this. So in answer your question, Eric, I think they can do whatever they want to do, but I think it would be better to allow writers and creators to come up with actual characters that the narrative can follow without trying to make it happen and try to force something down people's throats, because that insults the audience orientation. I hope I answered that. I have a question. Why is the picture of your favorite son in the background? Oh my God. Because my son, I think, stuck that there because he's a little weird. The same one that's asking me these questions. This is Trey. I think I met your wife's sons at Walmart. How are you doing? Oh, I'm good. Thank you. Maybe you did. Tina does tell people about the network. And so I'm happy that you joined us. Hey, feel free to ask questions. Tonight is a little different. Over the last couple episodes, I've done an actual lesson and I've talked about the uneducables and how the unteachables, folks who have how mental health and societal issues have invaded our schools. But because I haven't been feeling well this week, I'm really just making this more of an interactive session. So feel free to ask questions or whatever that may be historically. And I'm sure we will be able to answer it. Yeah, say glad to see you. We are doing great. Nice to see you tuned in. Oh, that's cool. Hopefully you watch Monday's show and enjoy asking questions here as well. Yes, ask questions. Ask questions. Hey, I'm not gonna. If you guys aren't gonna ask any questions, then I'm gonna bloviate and talk about something. I try to give you all something because, as I said, I haven't really been feeling well, so I didn't really prepare a distinctive lesson tonight. But we can go wherever we want to go because of that. So I'm watching you while I'm at work, and no, Miss Phillips, I didn't get to join. Hey, you could always go back, Trey, and watch any of those episodes. Go pull it up on the Erudition Network, and we will be here. Eric, you don't have to raise your hand and say you have a question. You can just ask the question. Ask the question. Yes, it's reactive formation and exaggerated reactive behavior trying to fit into the norm of society. Well, there's a lot of that, Teddy. And psychologically, a lot of people fall into that because, that whole group think thing also is a huge part of it, right? And people focusing on those things and losing themselves to it. Yeah, it's kind of crazy, but it is what it is. I did see something the other day, and we're how do I put this? You got to be careful the way you put things nowadays, because if you just say it, people get in their feelings. But we're having a problem, right? I saw a video where a woman it's disturbing to me because she has an interracial child, where she basically said that she doesn't like to teach her child about anything having to do with their Black side because it makes them feel some kind of way, and she doesn't want to make her child feel negative. And I responded to her on social media. I don't know if she saw it or not. So many people respond, but I responded to her going, we really gotta stop that. I told her, you need to understand that our story is so much more than slavery. Our story is a lot more than being, pushed down and held down. W.B. Du Bois called it the gift of Black folks, right? The gift of Black folks, where we look at how we've explored parts of this world, not just this nation, and left evidence of our exploration that many ignore. You look at the revolutions that we've done in labor, right? And strengthening the workforce. When you look at integration was important because what integration did is it also opened up the workforce in a way that it had never been seen, not only for African Americans, but for women in its whole, right? When you look at the laws that were passed to subjugate us, like Plessy versus Ferguson, right? Or even Brown versus the Board of Education, both of those have significant issues in society and how society opened up its borders to labor, to business. We've left indelible examples throughout history. But what I told her was, follow us, watch us, but, and I will definitely give you some reasons why they shouldn't feel down. But the thing is, if we tell people that the only thing that they have to look to is 1619, is rather that be indentured slavery, rather that be chattel slavery, then we're going to have a problem in teaching young people, because nobody wants to feel like they have been held down. Nobody. And that's something that I think we need to look at too. Yeah, all right. Let me see what these questions are. Elliot said, I have a question. What do you think about the problems in Canada right now? What problem in particular are you talking about? Because I think there are several problems going on in Canada. Give me what you're actually talking about. So as we are on the brink of nuclear war, how is today different or similar to the era of the Soviet Union, and how Malcolm X, Martin Luther King addressed these issues that tear us apart? Well, here's the thing. I think we've talked about this a little bit before, but here's the thing. Nuclear war is something that has been a threat to us ever since the creation of the first atomic bomb. It's just going to be here because the science is there. Not only is the science there, But the science has been stolen. It has been shared. It has been magnified. We have ways to make even more powerful bombs. And in relation to civil rights, to Malcolm X and Dr. King and all of them, well, they talked about this, right? When you read Malcolm's The Ballad of the Bullet, and he talks about how these countries manipulate, how they put things in place, but we don't use those things. We created something called the United Nations so that we would never have another world war. That was the purpose of the United Nations. It was supposed to be so that nations had a seat at the table to discuss the welfare of the world. And what we have done is we have allowed America, however, to police everybody. And in doing that, policing and putting people in these states. I tell people, America can go off the coast. You see my globe here. America can go off the coast of any sovereign country in the world and sail around it with full battleships, full missile arrangement, guns, and everything, and sail around these sovereign countries. Say they have an agreement with some and don't have agreement with others, but don't care. But then get angry when countries say, why are you here? It is as ignorant as someone driving around your neighborhood with guns, right, over and over again, who don't live in your neighborhood, and then getting mad when you say, why are you around my neighborhood with these guns? And then stopping deliveries like Amazon and everything else from coming to your house without them checking it first. And until we address that foolery, we're going to always have this issue, Eric, of are we going to go to war? Are our civil rights being violated? Because we're violating rights everywhere. And other countries have now followed suit, and they're doing similar. And we're mad at it. Well, why is China selling around Taiwan? Well, why are you selling around Taiwan? And this is from a person who serves in the Navy. We ask these questions, but we also follow the orders. Trey, welcome to the club. And remember, you can ask questions even if it's off the given topic. Just say something. Okay. My biggest concern right now is World War III. How do you get off of this escalating ladder? Well, Eric, I'm going to tell you, if you go back and look at the history before World War I, people ask the same question. You had all of these countries who made these covenants and promises to other countries, so that when Archduke Ferdinand was killed, people took advantage of those systems. And the result was World War, because people wanted to try out their new forms of war. Then we said after the Great War, never again. The war to end all wars. And within 30 years, we were back to war again. Because, again, we have these situations where we escalate. We escalate. And we think that the policies, even you, everybody, when you vote for those, voting from your mayor, your senator, your congressman, your alderman, all of this has significance. You know, I constantly hear people talk about the other parties, right? Oh, I want a Green Party. Oh, I want this third party that's not Republican or Democrat. And I've said for years, that's never going to happen if you don't affect the legislation at the lower levels. That's never going to happen. But then we don't have people who come out to vote. And then we have people who have been conditioned to go and vote for what their parents voted for, what their grandparents voted for, what other people voted for, because we don't think for ourselves. When everyone, in my opinion, should be independent. There shouldn't be, I'm a lifelong Democrat, I'm a lifelong Republican, because I guarantee you, whatever Democrat or Republican, whoever you are, liberal or conservative, there has been something within your group that you didn't agree with. So do you just vote and go because that right there is the norm? And so then you are unhappy and you vote against your better interests. You know, history shows us that people wrote a lot about these things well before we came along, well before we rolled into life. You go and you look at the Mayflower Compact of 1620 and see how they found themselves negotiating for other folks' land. Go and look at the Declaration of Independence, 1776, right? And see what people categorize as actual men, because that's the important thing that we forget about the Declaration of Independence, right? And then we look at, you know, there are so many things. I was reading about 2 weeks ago the Articles of Confederation and Perpetual Union, and realizing that that was in 1781. But a lot of us don't read these things, these so-called historical documents that establish our country, right? But how many of you have actually read it? How many of you actually even covered it in school? You know, a lot of times when I talk to people, they tell me straight up, I've never heard of that. The Articles of Confederation and Perpetual Union was basically our first constitution. And yet many of us have never picked up to actually read it. Many of us don't understand what it was for. And what it really was for, it was for the 13 original colonies. It was to make sure that they didn't war as each other, and that they allowed themselves to work together without stepping on each other, but ensuring certain things like slavery, ensuring certain things like how the states would work with each other, how they would be independent, but yet together, confederated. But many of us, I guarantee you, have never read it. We just read the Constitution and people tell us that the Constitution is what it is. I meant to ask you, is the smog in Colorado with the Canadian fires? We're having some horrible situations here with smog and different things. Our weather is greatly affected. We actually have had a lot more rain this season, which I'm not complaining about, but the smog has been bad and it does affect people's breathing. Sun has been really, it's been hard with the UV rays, people getting sunburned. So yeah, it's a mess. I keep telling people voting is important in a democracy, but unfortunately, some people would rather sit out and when things don't work out, exercise their privilege to protest and complain. They complain more than they vote. That's just the truth of America. But the complaints usually are ill place because a lot of people who are complaining, like you said, Teddy, they have not voted. I also had a question from a random thought. As we're brought here through various African countries as slaves, what was the prevalent African language spoken, and why have we forgotten that language? First off, there is not. So there's an argument here. There are many African languages spoken, but I will tell you that if you look at the Bantu migration, and you go back and you look at that, you will see that a lot of the language that was being pushed through Africa, people spoke certain languages, but we can't just put it as one language, Eric. That's what I'm saying. I guess you could look at it and think that it's one, but it's really not. But it was probably more Bantu language than anything that the slaves could speak. But then that opens up a lot of other languages, right? But I would say it's probably more Bantu based language. But then that would be Swahili, Zulu, which is associated with Zulu. So, but people could understand each other. The reasons why the slave owners didn't want them to speak that is, one, they didn't understand it. Two, it allows people to align themselves, right? We don't speak that language because it was beaten in the earlier parts of the slave culture. It was taken, stripped, and beaten out of a lot of our ancestors at penalty of death for you speaking African languages in the midst of white owners. So there's a huge part of that plays into that. Good question. Y'all actually asking a lot of good questions right now. You were slow at the beginning, but you're asking good questions right now. I don't know, but let me say something else about that as I think about it. We're not Black people in this country are probably some of the most, and I say this in generalized, patriotic people in the country, and a lot of that comes from their African roots, their African tribal roots of ownership of their tribe and ownership of who they are. And I say that because the more Americanized that the enslaved got, they believe they paid, and justifiably so, that they played a huge part in the creation of this country. And the ownership of that makes you not too quick, right? I'm going to be an American one day. I don't think that there's any slave, or the people don't like to hear the term slave. Enslaved people is what the new catchphrase is. But I think even with that enslaved thing, we get away from the truth of it. They were slaved. When we say enslaved, we try to say that, well, somebody slaved them. That may have been the case in the beginning. But there's a reason why Harriet Tubman said that she could have freed more if they'd only knew they were slaves. Slavery is diabolical because what it did is it made people feel that some of them that felt there was no hope. This was the way of life. This is the way I'm going to live. But I do believe that a lot of enslaved or slave people or slaves always thought at some point, if not them, their children would be free. Because slavery was never something fully accepted, even from its inception in the colonies. People still felt that it was wrong, whether they white, black, whatever. And And there was constant uprisings, fights, people being taken out of slavery and taken north as far as Canada, or taken somewhere where they could be outside of slavery. Whites trying to save whatever little ones that they could. Blacks trying to escape. So there was never a full acceptance of slavery by the complete public. But at the same time, there were people who were slaved. And they basically we see that today. They basically said, well, this is my environment, this is my lot, and this is what I'm going to accept. And they didn't move beyond it. They didn't try to move beyond it. But the whole Cleopatra thing is almost as if Egypt doesn't think themselves part of Africa. Where is the line drawn as far as the Middle East versus Africa drawn? And where do these countries identify as? Well, here's the thing. I think I put out something a few days ago. Maybe it was a few days ago. I can't remember. But I know I saw something on social media, and I put a picture out of it because to me it was just reprehensible. It was so stupid. What someone had said was so ignorant and egregious to me that I felt that I needed to address it. Where they put out this these percentages. I'm seeing if I can find it. Of people, and I thought, what moron? And let me explain this. I understand that there are people in America as well as abroad who accept this foolery in the background of people. Share this. It's a good question, Eric. All right, here we go. So you see this right here? Somebody shared this the other day. And they were talking about Egyptian ancestry from ancient populations. Now, I went in and started looking at this and went, wow, they're really stupid. Because we're so caught up in the idea of the Neolithic Levant people, where we forget that the people who lived in who went to the Levant came from Africa. They came from Africa. So if you say 45% of Levant Neolithic, what are you really saying here? You're saying that the people who left Africa 50,000 to 60,000 years ago to go live in the Levant are something different? That they're Arab? They're African. And if you say that Egypt is populated to this day by DNA by people who came from the Levant, what are you saying? This is why it's so important to go back and learn early world history. Because when we don't do that, we allow people to say some of the dumbest things. Foolery. You post these ideas with the thought that this is going to prove that these people are not African. But then you don't think where the people of the Levant came from. It's like looking at the DNA of Asians and Africans and seeing that they share huge traits of DNA and not understanding why that is. Because you didn't go back further enough to realize that people travel by coast. right? So it's not, and if you're not aware of where the Levant is, let me break this down for you. Maybe I can pull a map up for you. I was going to show you with my actual globe. I want to show you where the Levant is. Let's do this. Because again, it's foolery. It is straight foolery. And we have to start to address this, because if we keep going down this foolery, if we keep accepting it as reality, then it comes down to a lot of us just really being conditioned to follow it and not ask these questions. So let's share this. I just took a quick picture of a map because I want you guys to see this. And this is just me pulling a quick picture. That's the Levant, right? So you're talking about the areas that are what we now see as Israel, Jordan, Syria, Egypt, and forgetting that all of this right here before the modern world was Africa. It was designated as Africa. The people all looked African, Ethiopian by what they called in the Bible. But yet we keep coming up with this foolery because we only want to look at Black history as it goes to 1619. We only want to see or hear about the Dutch slaves, if that's what you want to call them, that came over in 1619. They were indentured. And many of them they worked their way out of their indenture and owned property. But we start our history by, I see people walking around with hats and gold figures and rings that say 1619. What are you celebrating? But you don't look at the African Phoenicians. You don't look at the migration out of Africa. You don't look at the science that has shown over and over again how Black people travel throughout the world. It's foolery. So when we argue the Cleopatra thing, what we're really arguing is, are the Egyptians in any way African? And then the foolery comes in by saying, well, they had, Greek and people who were part of their family. Here's the thing. There's not one African American over here whose family has lived over here who was fully African. You're not. But do you have African in you? Absolutely. Does society treat you like you have African in you? Absolutely. But yet you can argue every day, no, I'm white because I got white people in me. My great-great-great-great-grandfather was a white guy. Rather he fell in love with my great-great-grandmother or he raped her or whatever, I'm white. It's as foolish as the Mexicans now and a lot of the Latinos saying, I'm Spanish. My ancestors were conquistadors, the very people who killed the indigenous folks in South America. And you're happy about that because that makes you feel like a conqueror and not a victim. It's foolery. People are making jokes about the crew who died in their excursion with little regard to people's families. How can we get people to value life more than accepting lives becoming a statistic? Here's the thing. People, I think, are more joking about the fact that those were billionaires who made a dumb decision, who used hubris and went out and got themselves killed. That's their prerogative. But I do say, Teddy, that people need to have some compassion, because it's not just those men. They have families, folks, right, who probably are really hurting right now and don't need to be on social media anyway. But those who are should not be seeing, well, look at these fools. We do need to have a little bit of compassion for folks. Comedy is meant to soften the seriousness of a situation, not disregard it entirely. But unfortunately, people have lost the concept of what comedy is, just like the Dave Chappelle situation. People don't want to, they laugh at the inappropriate. And then we need to ask the question psychologically, why is that? Why do we minimize the value of human life, no matter whose life it is? I'd ask you, and you know, I'm not a fan of Shakespeare. I'll put that openly to you, but I'd ask you to go and read Shakespeare's Julius Caesar and watch or read the part in which Marcus Antony tries to get the crowd to understand the humanity of Caesar over the guys who had killed Caesar. Because Caesar did wrong, but Caesar also did good. And that's how that is weighed. And he does such a great job in his argument that he actually gets, and that's one of the few things I like from Shakespeare. He wrote that, expertly, right? To get people to follow and to go against the very people who they initially were cheering because they had killed a tyrant. Very important literary thing to read. Question: we pulled into Montenegro, if you remember, it was as if they had never seen Black folks before. What does a presence in Europe look like in that part of the world, and why? Well, here's the thing. A lot of people don't see a lot of Blacks other than what they see. And this is where I think that America does Black people worldwide a disservice. America being the premier that does us a disservice. For over 90 years of film and television and media, we have portrayed Blacks as inferior, as ghetto, as criminal. And that has seeped into world politics. In the 1960s, Malcolm X, he talked to world leaders in Africa and encouraged them to go and push the UN to fight for the rights of their Black brethren and sister in America. And one of the things that he would have to do is let them understand, hey, I was a criminal. I ran with that part of life, but I'm still a man. I'm still somebody. I educated myself. I got beyond that. And it created a solidarity. A lot of the nations throughout the world see Black folks in the way they see them. And I can tell you from spending 3 years over in Bahrain, the way that they see them is greatly influenced by what we allow to go into the public. It is the reason why I said the Will Smith smack, though funny to some, I looked at it in a different way. That went across the world. Here you got rich, celebrated Black men getting into a scrap, doing something that white men do not do. And it creates the idea of the uncivilized. It furthers the antics of racists and bigots who see the African as something other. It is the reason why the boat, right, the Messiana migrant boat, could sink, right, in the Med. But because what was it filled with? Egyptians, Pakistanis, Afghans, some Palestinians, Syrians. Who cares? They shouldn't have been coming over here anyway. It is amazing to me how the people of the Med now, the Greeks and the Turks, how people look at Africans when you go back and you read, if you read and study, and you see that Plato and all of the great Herodotus and all of these great historical minds of the past loved Africans, lauded them, talked about the beauty of them. I've said this before. Many of our Greek myths are based on African cultures. When I was a teenager, I didn't know that. I thought they were talking about the other parts of the Greek Isle. I didn't know that they were writing about our ancestors. I didn't realize that they were talking about us, our history, their love of Africans and their ability to do things that they thought were incredible. These cultures that they created. But here we are now in parts of the world, like you said, Eric, you go over in Montenegro, they act like, whoa, I've never seen a black man before. Some are in awe and some are cautious. Because in their mind, what are they flashing back to? What have I seen about black people, though? Particularly black Americans, whether he's wearing a military uniform or not. So it is despicable. It is something that we have to do better at. It's one of the reasons why we teach. And this was a very open and slower session tonight. And I thank you all for sticking around and getting through it with me. But at the heart of it is foolery. We are allowing the world to be foolish to black people. We're allowing it. And when I say we are allowing it, I do mean that. Because as I often say, I don't see too many historians getting on, talking to you about history, answering your questions. And then when you do see anybody, if you do catch them, it's because they're old, no longer part of an institution, and now they feel free to say what they've known for years. We need those public historians. We need those people who are not aligned with an institution, who are not biased or owned by someone. So if I say something, they can pull my coat strings and tell me, oh, you're going to lose this. We got to do better with that. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you. Eric, I saw your last thing here. Teddy, you said that yes, because no one is viewing the propaganda. That is true. So like playing Civilization, other games, playing as an African nation and taking over the world, had we been in power, would the world have turned out differently? I don't know if it would have turned out differently, but I do believe that a lot of, let's look at the African Phoenicians. They didn't go to societies. We see this by history. They didn't go to societies to conquer. They went to societies to trade. They went to societies to grow it, right? When we see Africans who traveled over to the New World well before Columbus, the reason we don't talk about them is because they weren't conquerors. They didn't come there and scorch earth everything. They didn't destroy the people. As a matter of fact, when Columbus actually came over to Hispaniola, the actual indigenous people there told them about the Africans and told them how they had helped them, taught them how to make spears, taught them how to create certain crops, taught them. There's a difference between a conquering mentality, an imperialistic mentality, and a supportive mentality where we're coming over. The term is called syncretism, right? Where I'm coming over to allow the cultures to meld together, bring parts of both cultures to become something stronger. As opposed to, I'm coming over to conquer you, to hold you down. As I've said before, the Spanish came over and read to them and told them in a language that they did not understand, but in order to help their conscience by saying, if you don't do what we say, we will destroy you, because God willed it that way. You are the infidel. We are bringing God to you. We're bringing society to you, civilization to you. There is a difference. And I think once we learn our history better and we understand that difference, we could all grow from it. So as I look back, would the world have been better? I think it may have been. Because there was no desire in a lot of these tribes, I'm not saying everyone, to conquer you, to subjugate you, to treat you as another. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. I hope you got something from this show tonight. Please share. If you are one of those who are going to watch the replay or you're watching it on YouTube, I ask you to do us the favor of sharing the program. Share. Please. We need to grow the Erudition Network. We now have about 109 people on YouTube. I want us by the end of the summer, and we should, to have at least 500 subscribers. And that comes down to people sharing and growing the network with us. We put out at least 3 shows a week. And we do that at a cost to do it, but we do it because we want people to grow. If you don't donate, we have a Cash App that's running down at the bottom, as ran at the end throughout the program. If you can't donate, then do what you can and at least share the programs on Facebook, on Instagram, on YouTube, on TikTok. Share. Get people to come on and learn. I promise you they will learn something. I promise you they will get something from every program that is on Erudition. Rather it be a laugh, rather it be how to live a more fruitful and stable life, rather it be history, rather it be knowledge. You're going to get something from the network. And we need you to be a friend of the network and share. Talk to your people at work. Tell them, hey, man, you should watch this. Help us grow so that we can all learn together to create a better society, a better culture, our environment, even if it's just within our own sphere of influence. Please do that for us. I'm going to get off of here. I thank everybody. I received a lot of people who sent me different chats, things, present things for me feeling better. I wasn't feeling very well this week, and I appreciate you all sticking with me here tonight. I have a headache, but I'm still going to doing this. But I thank you, and I hope that you join. The next show will be Tina will be on Monday. I hope that you join her on Monday. The boys will be on Wednesday. All of our programs start at 5 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, 6 p.m. Central Standard Time. So please join those programs as they're on next week. And we look forward to hearing from you. Thank you for your questions tonight. And I hope you have a great and wonderfully blessed rest of the week. Thank you. Have a good one.